Another idiom for jumping the shark. The term jump the shark was coined by Sean Connolly and John Hine in 1985, based on their premise that the scene that marks the beginning of the decline of the American television show Happy Days occurred in the episode in which the Fonz jumps over a shark on water skis. The phrase caught on and is now widely used, not only for TV series, to describe a far-fetched, ridiculous event that is indicative of a decline in quality. An article I read today quotes someone saying that they stayed with Donald Trump until election night 2020. When he came out and said the election was stolen, it was that night on ABC that I broke from him. Because here was the President of the United States using the trappings that had been given to him by the people of this country to create doubt on the fairness of our democracy. And to me, that just went beyond anything that he had done or said before. That was when he jumped the shark for me, and I was done. I jumped the shark. I'm also surprised I can't think of an older idiom that could serve in its place. The beginning of the end is close, but it lacks the explicative ridiculousness element. Why it's the beginning of the end.
Beyond the pale. To be beyond the pale is to be unacceptable, outside agreed standards of decency. The pale is an almost obsolete term for a stake or a stick with a sharp point, the site the phrase finder further reveals. The paling fence is significant as the term pale came to mean the area enclosed by such a fence, and later just figuratively the area that is enclosed and safe. So to be beyond the pale was to be outside the area accepted as home. Examples taken from news reports. BBC News, the 24th of May 2022. Former Justice Secretary Robert Buckland told BBC Radio Wiltshire that, if there's a deliberate lie, I can't see how anybody, including this Prime Minister, can continue. There are things we say honestly and genuinely at the time that we believe to be true. Now that's one thing. Going and deliberately saying X is Y, knowing that is the case is, of course, beyond the pale. Sky News, June 1, 2023. Tory MP angry and disappointed, and describes Partygate report findings as beyond the pale and a slap in the face. The New York Times, July 14, 2019. Even though Mr. Trump has repeatedly refused to back down from stoking racial divisions, his willingness to deploy a lowest-rung slur, one commonly and crudely used to single out the perceived foreignness of non-white, non-Christian people, was largely regarded as beyond the pale. Foreignpolicy.com, August 31, 2010, all emphasis mine. These bouts of outrage confirmed what we already knew. Blair has been exiled from polite and right-thinking discourse in Britain. He, much more than Bush, is beyond the pale. He is the man of whom we do not speak. Bush, the fashionable line insists, was an ignoramus, but Blair should have known better. These days, Blair's name is mud on the eastern side of the Atlantic. The former Prime Minister has been entirely disowned. He stands accused of selling his soul and, worse, his judgment to a cowboy American president and, worse still, doing it on the cheap. The expression beyond the pale summarizes succinctly the public's mistrust of these political leaders whose irresponsible actions eventually lead to either their resignation or failure to be re-elected.
Go, off the rails. Off the rails, out of the proper or normal condition, off the usual or expected course. 1848 G.E. Dewsbury let. Mar. 1892, 242. I was very worried, and I felt as if the least thing would throw me off the rails. 2007 Guardian, Nexus, May 7th, Sports Section, 12. There we were bound for glory, and suddenly it all went off the rails. OED. Go off the rails, to lose control and start to behave in a way that is not normal or acceptable. MW. As you point out, jump the shark, much less common and probably not widely known, usually refers specifically to a loss of credulity/quality in a TV series, film, book, movement, etc. on the part of viewers/readers/observers/followers, often triggered by a specific outlandish event/episode. To go/run off the rails is much broader in applicability. It can conjure up the often disastrous consequences of an event as serious as a train derailment, although, as some of the Google Book examples illustrate, it can overlap with jump the shark and refer to judging a loss of credibility, quality, etc. But the movie truly jumps the shark with its tacky, supposedly comical, finale that sees two werewolves in silhouette having sex, doggy style, naturally, and a jokey final coda that negates the very nature of the only two characters we care anything about. But indeed it does offer some heart in a seemingly doomed relationship between the two likable leads, at least until it goes off the rails at film's end. Brian Sen, The Werewolf Filmography, 2017. Then his story started to go off the rails. They had a listening device in his ear and amp, sometimes used it to tell him things. Jeff Wade, Tales from the and Other Places, 2019, as you must see, I disapproved. I regretted what happened. It was just one of those cases where a project by intense people who are under pressure runs off the rails. But there was no question that we had run off the rails. Andrew. St. George, Hearings, Us House, 1970. No wonder the show went off the rails as soon as Wade's existing books had all been adapted. Olivia Dade, All the Feels, 2021, and yet I digress, since what matters to me is not really where Maya goes wrong but where filmmaking does, and I think this film goes off the rails when Bigelow and Bowl carry out their belief that putting audiences in a scene helps them to understand something about it. David LaRocca, The Philosophy of War Films, 2015. Conscience is a gift. But it can become a merciless slave master. There is no doubt that anger itself usually runs far off the rails. It can become a fruitless, self-destructive routine, in the same way that anger at others can become a fruitless other-destructive obsession. David Powlison, Good and Angry, 2016, one of the girls added that even between friends, when it came to Simeon going off the rails, on cocaine, for example, when someone is in obvious distress and showing signs of self-destruction, Felicia Garcia, Coping and Suicide Amongst the Lads, 2016.
I suggest that the then president's speech was a pivotal moment. Collins' dictionary gives some usages. The year 1989 was a pivotal moment in world history when one era ended and another began. It was a pivotal moment in my life, and not just musically. There are synonyms to be found in thesaurus.com and word hippos such as tipping point, point of no return, turn of the tide, turning point, moment of truth, etc.
He crossed the Rubicon. This is from the Romans, but it is idiomatic in English. The phrase, crossing the Rubicon, is an idiom that means, passing a point of no return. Its meaning comes from allusion to the crossing of the river Rubicon by Julius Caesar in early January 49 BC. The exact date is unknown. Scholars usually place it on the night of the 10th and the 11th of January, based on speeds at which messengers could travel at that time. His crossing of the river precipitated Caesar's civil war, which ultimately led to Caesar's becoming dictator for life, dictator perpetuo. Wikipedia.
If you want to support the channel, please consider liking and subscribing.